Imagine a woman standing before the most powerful throne in the ancient world. Around her are priests, generals, royal officials, and men who believe that Egypt's king should be a man. Yet she is wearing the symbols of a pharaoh. A ceremonial beard rests beneath her chin. The double crown of Egypt sits on her head. Her name is carved into monuments built to outlast generations. And she is not merely surviving. She is ruling. Her name is Hatshepsut. More than 3,000 years ago, she became one of the most powerful women in ancient Egypt. She controlled armies, commissioned enormous temples, organized long-distance trade, and transformed the image of Egyptian kingship. But after her death, something extraordinary happened. Her monuments were damaged. Her images disappeared. Her name was sometimes removed from official records. For centuries, it seemed as though someone had tried to erase her from history. Was Hatshepsut a usurper who stole the throne from a rightful king? Was she a ruthless political operator? Or was the woman later generations tried to forget actually one of Egypt's most successful rulers? To understand what happened, we have to return to a royal family surrounded by death, inheritance, and a dangerous question. Who would control Egypt when the king was gone? But what really happened? Around 1500 BCE, Egypt was entering one of the most powerful periods in its history. The new kingdom was beginning to emerge as an age of military expansion, enormous wealth, monumental architecture, and strong royal authority. Egypt was not simply a kingdom. It was a civilization built around the idea that political power and divine order were connected. The pharaoh was more than a politician. He was presented as the earthly representative of cosmic order, responsible for maintaining Ma'at, the principle of balance, justice, and stability. And traditionally, that pharaoh was male. Hatshepsut was born into the royal family during the early 18th dynasty, probably around 1507 BCE. Her father was Pharaoh Thutmose I. Her mother, Ahmose, was a queen of royal importance. Hatshepsut therefore possessed something extremely valuable in ancient Egypt: royal blood. But royal blood alone did not guarantee the throne. She was married to her half-brother, Thutmose II, following a royal tradition in which close-kin marriages could help preserve the dynasty's legitimacy. Then tragedy struck. Thutmose II died. And suddenly, Hatshepsut found herself at the center of a political crisis. The heir was not her own child. It was a young boy named Thutmose III, the son of Thutmose II and a secondary wife named Isis. Thutmose III was probably still a child. And Hatshepsut became his regent. Officially, she was governing on behalf of the young king. But then something happened that would transform Egyptian history. She became king herself. Not queen. King. At first, Hatshepsut did not simply seize the throne and declare war on her stepson. The historical evidence suggests something much more complicated. Early in Thutmose III's reign, Hatshepsut appears as a powerful queen and regent. Then, around the 7th year of Thutmose III's reign, she adopted the full titulary and imagery of a pharaoh. Her statues began presenting her with traditional royal symbols. She was increasingly depicted wearing the Nemes headdress. She was shown with the ceremonial false beard associated with kingship. And in inscriptions, she used masculine royal language. To modern eyes, this can look like an attempt to disguise herself. But that interpretation is too simple. Hatshepsut was not pretending to be biologically male. She was adopting the visual language of Egyptian kingship. Ancient Egyptian art was highly symbolic. The image of a ruler was designed to communicate authority, legitimacy, and divine status. Hatshepsut therefore created something politically brilliant. She did not destroy the traditional system. She entered it. And she had a powerful argument for doing so. Her father, Thutmose I, was repeatedly presented as having designated her for kingship. Inscriptions associated with her reign portray her as the legitimate ruler chosen by divine authority. One of the most famous traditions appears at her great temple at Deir el-Bahari, where the god Ammonius is presented as approving her royal destiny before her birth. But there is an important warning here. These inscriptions were produced during her reign. They are political statements, not neutral eyewitness reports. We cannot simply assume every detail happened exactly as the monuments describe. What we can say is that Hatshepsut understood something crucial. In ancient Egypt, legitimacy could be constructed through religion, genealogy, ritual, and monuments. And she was exceptionally good at all four. Then came the building. And this is where Hatshepsut's reign becomes extraordinary. Instead of relying primarily on military conquest to advertise her power, she invested heavily in construction. Her greatest monument rose at Deir el-Bahari, near the Valley of the Kings. Imagine approaching the cliffs of western Thebes and seeing enormous terraces rising against the limestone landscape. Long colonnades. Massive statues. Religious scenes. Inscriptions. A monumental complex designed to connect the queen's earthly authority with the gods. Its architecture was revolutionary for its time. The temple was not merely a place of worship. It was political messaging carved into stone. Hatshepsut was telling Egypt, I belong here. I have the authority to rule. The gods support me. And my reign will endure. But the most fascinating part of her propaganda was not what she said about herself. It was what she showed Egypt. Hatshepsut portrayed herself as a ruler who brought prosperity rather than simply destruction. And one of the most important examples was a trading expedition to a distant land called Punt. Punt remains one of ancient Egypt's great geographical mysteries. Historians generally associate it with regions around the southern Red Sea, possibly involving parts of modern Eritrea, Ethiopia, Sudan, or the Arabian Peninsula. But its exact location remains debated. Egyptian expeditions had traveled there before. Under Hatshepsut, however, the journey became a major part of her royal propaganda. At Deir el-Bahari, detailed reliefs depict ships crossing the sea. They show foreign rulers, exotic animals, trees, and valuable goods. Among the treasures brought back were incense-producing plants, aromatic resins, ebony, ivory, and other luxury commodities. And there is an extraordinary detail. The reliefs show living incense trees being transported back to Egypt. Whether every detail of the expedition was represented literally or ceremonially is difficult to determine. But the message was unmistakable. Hatshepsut could connect Egypt to distant lands. She could bring wealth into the kingdom. She could maintain the favor of the gods. And she could do something that every successful ruler needed to do. Make her reign appear useful. This was not merely luxury. Incense was deeply important to Egyptian religious rituals. Trade therefore had religious and political significance. The queen was not simply importing exotic goods. She was presenting herself as someone capable of maintaining the relationship between Egypt and the divine world. But that wasn't the whole story. Hatshepsut's greatest achievement may have been something far less glamorous. She appears to have presided over a relatively stable and prosperous period. Ancient Egypt was surrounded by competing powers. The kingdom of Kush lay to the south. The Levant to the northeast contained a constantly shifting network of cities and kingdoms. Military campaigns were part of royal life. Hatshepsut was certainly not a pacifist in the modern sense. Her reign included military activity, particularly in Nubia and elsewhere. But compared with the enormous military reputation later developed by Thutmose III, Hatshepsut's image was different. Her monuments emphasized divine legitimacy, trade, construction, and prosperity. And that difference matters. Because Hatshepsut did not simply occupy a throne during a weak moment. She appears to have governed for roughly 2 decades. That is a remarkably long time in the unstable world of ancient dynastic politics. If Thutmose III had been secretly plotting to overthrow her from the beginning, the evidence does not reveal a dramatic civil war between them. Instead, Thutmose III remained a central royal figure. He was shown in royal contexts. He participated in state ceremonies. And eventually, he became one of Egypt's most famous warrior pharaohs. So what happened between them? That is where the historical mystery becomes darker. Hatshepsut died around 1458 BCE. Thutmose III then became the undisputed ruler. And later in his reign, many monuments associated with Hatshepsut were altered or damaged. Her name was removed from certain inscriptions. Her images were destroyed or replaced. Some of her statues were dismantled. For centuries, this contributed to a simple story. Thutmose III hated his stepmother and tried to erase her from history. It is a compelling story. But historians are no longer so certain. The timing creates a problem. Much of the systematic destruction appears to have occurred years after Hatshepsut's death, perhaps around the end of Thutmose III's reign. That suggests the motive may have been more complicated than personal revenge. One possibility is that Thutmose III wanted to establish an uncomplicated succession narrative. Hatshepsut had occupied the king's position while he was young. Once she was gone, the dynasty had to present Thutmose III as the legitimate, continuous king. Removing her from certain royal monuments could therefore have been an attempt to control the historical memory of succession. Another possibility involves her successor, Amenhotep II. Some scholars have argued that later efforts to alter Hatshepsut's memory may have been connected to succession politics. But there is no single answer accepted by all historians. And there is an important clue hiding in the damage itself. Hatshepsut was not completely erased. Far from it. Her monuments survived. Her temple survived. Some statues survived. Her name survived in places where later officials never removed it. The attempt to erase her was therefore incomplete. And eventually, archaeologists would bring her story back. For centuries, Hatshepsut was difficult to identify. Some later scholars struggled to understand why a female ruler appeared in the imagery of a male king. Her monuments were sometimes attributed to other rulers. Then archaeology began putting the pieces together. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Egyptologists gradually reconstructed the sequence of her reign. Her identity became clearer. And one of the most dramatic discoveries came from her tomb. Her royal tomb, KV-20, was cut deep into the Valley of the Kings. It was an enormous project. The tomb extended far into the rock and was connected with the royal burial landscape. But Hatshepsut's mummy was not immediately obvious. In 1903, archaeologist Howard Carter discovered two female mummies in a nearby tomb, KV-60. For years, their identities remained uncertain. Later investigations eventually connected one of them with Hatshepsut. Modern examination has provided evidence supporting the identification of the mummy as Hatshepsut, although the story of the identification and the evidence surrounding it has been debated. What emerges is remarkably human. The woman whose statues once towered over temples had become a damaged, anonymous body in a tomb. Her teeth and bones told a story far removed from royal propaganda. The powerful pharaoh had eventually died like every other human being. And yet her political legacy was still waiting beneath the ruins. The most surprising thing about Hatshepsut may be what she did not need to do. She did not destroy the entire Egyptian political system. She did not abolish male kingship. She did not openly announce that women should replace men on the throne. Instead, she used the existing system with extraordinary skill. She presented herself as the king. She used masculine royal imagery. She invoked her father and the gods. She surrounded herself with loyal officials. One of the most important was Senenmut, an influential court official who appears to have held numerous positions during her reign. His relationship with Hatshepsut has generated centuries of speculation. Was he her secret lover? There is no reliable evidence proving a romantic relationship. What we do know is that Senenmut rose to remarkable prominence and was closely connected to her building projects. Ancient graffiti found in a construction area has sometimes been interpreted as sexual mockery involving Hatshepsut and Senenmut. But the evidence is fragmentary, and its meaning remains debated. This is an important lesson about ancient history. The absence of evidence does not prove innocence. But imagination is not evidence of guilt. And the most responsible history leaves unanswered questions unanswered. So why was Hatshepsut remembered for so long as a mystery? Because her reign challenges one of the simplest assumptions about ancient power. That the past was always controlled by men. It wasn't. Ancient societies were deeply patriarchal, but they were not incapable of accepting female political power. Hatshepsut's Egypt had precedents for powerful royal women. Queens could control estates, influence succession, perform religious roles, and exercise political authority. But Hatshepsut went further. She occupied the ultimate office. She became pharaoh. And she did it without destroying the political order around her. She mastered it. Her greatest weapon was not an army. It was legitimacy. Stone by stone, ritual by ritual, inscription by inscription, she constructed an argument that her rule was not an accident. It was destiny. And perhaps that is why her story remains so dangerous to later generations. Because Hatshepsut demonstrated that power could be taken by someone the traditional system had not been designed to expect. Today, when visitors stand before the terraces of Deir el-Bahari, they are looking at more than an ancient temple. They are looking at a political statement that survived an attempted erasure. The woman who built it has outlived the officials who tried to remove her name. Her statues were broken. Her inscriptions were altered. Her memory was obscured. But the evidence remained. And eventually, historians found it. Hatshepsut's story is therefore not simply the story of a queen who became king. It is the story of how power is created and how history itself can become a battlefield. The ancient Egyptians understood that monuments could shape memory. Thutmose III understood it. Hatshepsut understood it. And thousands of years later, we are still standing inside the consequences. Perhaps the greatest irony is this. The ruler who was supposedly erased became one of the most famous women of ancient Egypt. Her name survived. Her temple survived. Her story survived. And the empire she helped strengthen continued into one of the greatest periods of Egyptian power. So was Hatshepsut a ruthless usurper, a brilliant political survivor, or simply a ruler who understood the machinery of power better than anyone expected? We may never know exactly what happened inside the royal palace. But the stones tell us something. For more than 20 years, Hatshepsut held the throne of Egypt. And for more than 3,000 years, Egypt failed to forget her completely. History tried to erase the queen. The queen built something that refused to disappear.